Later today, Senate Republicans are planning to discuss a way around Senator Tommy Tuberville's holds on more than 350 high-level military promotions. The Alabama Republican has been objecting to the confirmation of nominees because of a Department of Defense policy that allows members of the military to be compensated for out-of-state travel for abortion health care services. While both parties try to find a way around the obstruction, Tuberville is blaming so-called woke policies while disparaging the men and women in uniform.
We've got the weakest military that we've had in probably a year in my lifetime.
Senator Tommy Tuberville joining us now, Republican presidential candidate, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Governor, good to see you.
Hey, Willie, thanks for being here.
We could talk about rest stops, but that's a whole
that's
a whole other segment. We'll before we dive in, let me just get your response to that. Senator Tuberville, first of all, this hold-up of the nominations that even Lindsey Graham Republicans, the floodgates opened a couple weeks ago and said this is insane. We got to get these people promoted. But also the comment that our military is as weak as it's ever been. What do you think?
Well, I've been saying for months that what he's doing is wrong on the promotions. You want to oppose that policy, oppose it, but don't hold up the readiness of our military and, quite frankly, the well-deserved promotions of people who have committed their lives to the defense of the country. It's just wrong-headed policy and political process to take. And I would put it just this, in response to the weakest military. Any country in the world would trade straight up for our military every day in the week. And so, and somebody who is a football coach should be able to relate to that thing. You look at what the talent is on the field. The talent on the field with the American military is better than the talent on the field in any other military in this world. And maybe we should talk to Coach Tuberville that way, and he might understand it.
Just bizarre to continue to attack the United States military when here he's part of the problem. So let's talk about the campaign. You're still trying to get on the debate stage, right? Next week.
We'll be on the
in
debate
Tuscaloosa.
Stage.
You're confident you'll be there?
Yep.
Okay, so you're on the debate stage. You've got Vivek Ramaswamy, you've got Ambassador Haley, you've got Governor DeSantis, small group of you now.
Yep.
What is your objective up there? What are you trying to do?
Listen to the questions and answer them. And answer them in a way that people can understand, that are direct and honest, and not memorized and manufactured. Not answering the question you wish you had been asked, but actually answering the question that you are asked. And I think we did that in the last debate. And I thought the last debate was the best one of the three that we've had. And I think that's why my numbers have gone up so much since the last debate, because I actually stood on the stage and acted, I think, like a president's supposed to act, which is to listen to the question that's asked and to answer it, and to give people clear direction on where you are and who you are and what kind of president you'd be. So I don't have really a different strategy for the fourth one. The good news is there'll be one less person, and so my ability to have a little more time to explain things and to discuss important issues will be there.
You put a lot of time and effort into the state of New Hampshire, of course, counting on winning that one and then rolling through from there. When you look at the polls still, after all these months of your putting time and effort in there that show Donald Trump way ahead, Nikki Haley up there with you now as well, how do you view that? How do you change that dynamic? How do you catch Donald Trump?
Well, I think, first off, the only way to catch Donald Trump is to actually go after Donald Trump. And I think I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually doing that. I heard Governor Haley yesterday say, that he's the right president for the right time, and that drama just seems to follow him, as if he's an innocent victim in that. Like, when you subvert the Constitution, some drama will ensue. When you try to block a valid election, when you lie to the American people and tell them election was stolen when it wasn't, when you send out a deranged social media post at 2 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving morning, talking about all the people you're thankful that you hate, that's why drama is there, because he creates it. And so for Governor Haley to act as if Donald Trump is some kind of innocent victim is a problem, because she's trying to be everything to everybody, and you can't. And that eventually gets discovered. And, that's why I don't worry necessarily about where the polls stand now. If you look at 2007, at this time, Thanksgiving in Iowa, the leader was Mitt Romney. Mike Huckabee was at 4%. He won the Iowa caucuses. In 2011, Newt Gingrich was winning the primary, and Rick Santorum was at 3%. He wound up winning those caucuses. And in 2015, Ben Carson was 10 points ahead of Donald Trump, and Ted Cruz was at 7%. And Ted Cruz wound up winning fairly handily the Iowa caucuses over Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, and Ben Carson was a fourth or fifth place.
But you agree this moment is different given the depth of support for Donald Trump among his hardcore supporters? In other words, there aren't persuadables among that group.
Oh, no, I disagree with you completely, Willie. Like, we, in our own internal polling, it showed us that nearly 3 out of 4 of Donald Trump's supporters in New Hampshire say that they could change their mind between now and Election Day. And the point in a place like New Hampshire, for instance, is that in the last race in 2016, 50% of the people said they made their decision in the last 3 days. 20% of those people said they made their decision on primary day. So when you look at these polls, they're fine for today, but the election isn't today. And what we've seen is in those 3 instances in Iowa, for instance, an early state that acts very similar to New Hampshire in terms of late deciding, you could see they really decided late because you had 3 men who were in single digits at Thanksgiving who wound up winning the Iowa caucuses. We're already in the mid-teens and higher in some polls in New Hampshire. So we feel really good about where we are. And we're not going to play this game of process stories and which donor am I meeting with or which donor am I getting a check from. We have plenty of money to compete, and we're not going to play those games. I'm playing to the voters in New Hampshire. They're the ones who will decide.
So, Governor Christie, this campaign, of course, is now shadowed by the war between Israel and Hamas. You were just in Israel. Tell us what you saw there, what you learned, and your analysis of what we're currently seeing, this pause in the fighting in order to get the hostages out.
Well, what I saw was, and I don't think anybody who hasn't been there can truly appreciate the depth of the inhumanity that Hamas visited on October 7th on the Israelis. I was in the kibbutz, the same one that Elon Musk was in yesterday. And I can tell you, just one quick story. I went into the home of a 24-year-old couple, recently married. When you walk in, the place had been completely ransacked. You saw the couch that the young woman was lying on reading a book when she was murdered, stained across the entire cushion of her blood. And then in the doorway of their bedroom, the floor stained with the husband's blood. That's where he was shot and killed. And I counted. There were 140 bullet holes in the walls to kill 2 people. This not only inhumanity, it's the joy they took in visiting that inhumanity on these folks. So what I say is, like, you can't ask people who survived that. That kibbutz, by the way, is 600 yards from the Gaza border. You cannot ask people to go back to their homes until you as the Israeli government can say, you're secure going back there because we have degraded Hamas's military capability. So that needs to be done. Now, it has to be balanced with trying to get these hostages home. And, that's a very difficult task. I admire what the Israeli government is doing in trying to balance both of them. But I don't think, according to what they're saying to us, that the job is done yet militarily with Hamas. So I think anybody who thinks this pause is going to extend into a permanent, ceasefire, I think is not understanding it from the Israeli perspective, which is we had a ceasefire on October 6th. They're the ones who violated it, and they came over here on a surprise attack, killing 12 to 1,400 Israeli innocent civilians.
So you just used the phrase, the joy they took in killing. Earlier today, we had Ambassador Karen Pierce, British ambassador to Washington, on with us, and she was asked the following question. Going forward, how does Israel deal in negotiating the future of Gaza, whoever would run Gaza, negotiating with a group of people, Hamas, who live by the rule, we have to kill Jews and eliminate the state of Israel? What kind of a negotiating partner is that?
Well, they can't negotiate with Hamas, Mike. That's a simple fact. They're a terrorist organization, and they can't negotiate with them. So if what we really want to get to is a 2-state solution, which I think makes sense, then the other Arab countries in the region have to work with Israel to get a negotiating partner for the Palestinians that is not a terrorist organization. And that's what we should be striving for. And that's why I think ultimately Israel has to keep their eye on 3 things, right? They need to, 1, protect their territorial integrity, the safety, security of their people. Job 1 of any government. 2, they've got to degrade the Hamas military capability to provide for that safety. But 3, they have to continue to isolate Iran. And the way to do that is to have a relationship with their Arab neighbors, some of which they already have agreements with, some they're striving to get agreements with. But they need to keep their eye on that ball too, because the continued isolation of Iran will degrade the capabilities of Hamas and Hezbollah, who Iran is the banker for. They need to do that. So you need to keep your eye on all three of those. It's a delicate problem. And as America, we should be publicly supporting Israel's right to exist, their right to defend themselves. And privately, we should be working with them on how best to negotiate a solution to the problem you just raised.